The frost still lingered on Frosthaven's walls, a ghostly scar of the battle that had shaken the city to its core. For 3 nights, the people whispered the name of their savior, the Iceborn, with voices trembling between awe and fear. Children dreamed of the dragon's fall. Merchants huddled in markets, telling and retelling how Lord Rohan stood against death itself. But within the council's chamber, there was no celebration. Only silence, thick as smoke. The High Elder sat beneath the carved wolf banners, his gnarled hands clenched around his staff. Lords and ladies filled the stone circle, their faces grim. The brazier's flames flickered, throwing long shadows across fur-lined cloaks and jeweled reins. Lord Dareth was the first to break the stillness. His voice cracked like ice under weight. Frosthaven cannot stand if its lord is half man, half sorcerer. He wielded the frost as Kaelor himself would. How long before he turns that power on us? Lady Eris, ever sharp as a blade, leaned forward. The people already fear him. They will bend the knee, yes, but not out of loyalty. Out of terror. And terror is a leash that frays quickly. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some nodded, others frowned. But no one spoke in Rohan's defense, not yet. The High Elder finally raised his hand. The trial of flame was to prove his innocence. Instead, the gods gave us no answer. And now, his clouded eyes narrowed. Now we face a lord bound to a crystal that feeds on death. Tell me, is that salvation, or doom? The council fell into uneasy silence again. Unseen in the rafters above, Kaelor's shadow stirred. The sorcerer's laughter whispered like wind through cracks in the stone. None could hear him, save perhaps the faint tremor in the fire, the subtle dimming of torchlight. Yes, he murmured to himself. Plant your seeds of doubt. Let them choke the wolf until he snaps. Elsewhere in the keep, Rohan stood on the balcony overlooking the city. His breath misted in the cold air, his body still aching from the battle. The crystal lay against his chest, quiet but warm, a silent heartbeat that tethered him to Kaelor's curse. Aelin stepped into the chamber behind him. She had not left his side since the dragon's fall, but tonight her face was drawn, her hand never far from the hilt of her dagger. They fear you, she said softly. Rohan's jaw tightened. Let them. Fear keeps them alive. Fear also breeds knives in the dark, she replied, stepping closer. The council plots even now. I hear the whispers, exile or worse. They smile to your face, but they do not see a lord. They see a monster. He turned to face her. And you? What do you see, Aelin? Her eyes lingered on his, searching, weighing. I see a man fighting a war against himself, and losing more with each victory. The words cut deep, more than any blade. For in his heart, he knew she spoke truth. Each time he wielded the frost, he felt Kaelor's grip tighten. Each time the crystal pulsed, he wondered if it was his heartbeat, or the sorcerer's. A shout rose from the courtyard below, soldiers calling for order. Torches flared as a crowd gathered at the gates. Rumors had spread faster than the guards could contain them. Farmers, merchants, even children shouted the same word over and over, voices carrying into the cold night air. Iceborn, Iceborn, Iceborn. But whether it was a chant of reverence or fear, Rohan could not tell. Aelin's grip tightened on his arm. They will crown you or kill you, Rohan. There will be no middle ground. Rohan looked down at the crowd, his people, his city. A storm brewed in their eyes, and he knew the battle with the dragon had been only the beginning. Above them all, Kaelor's laughter curled unseen through the frost. The night deepened, but Frosthaven did not sleep. The chants outside the keep rose and fell like waves crashing against stone. Torches lit the streets, their flames swaying in the storm winds, painting faces in shifting light. Some knelt in prayer, calling Rohan the savior sent by the gods. Others spat his name as a curse, demanding the council free them from the grip of sorcery. Inside, the great hall was a tinderbox. Lords, soldiers, and envoys gathered under the vaulted ceiling, voices hissing like serpents in the dark. Rohan stood at the center, Aelin at his side, while the council circled him with words sharpened into weapons. Lord Dareth's voice cut through the noise. This is no longer a question of loyalty. It is survival. The people will not tolerate a lord whose blood runs with witchcraft. Rohan's gaze was steady. Those same people cheer my name. They stand safe behind these walls because I bled for them. Do you think your council decrees would have stopped the raiders? Do you think your prayers would have slain the dragon? His words struck like blows, but Lady Eris stepped forward, her furs sweeping the floor. And how long before your hunger grows? How long before the frost you wield turns upon us? Do you not feel it, my lord? That crystal on your breast is not a gift. It is a chain, and one day, it will drag you into the abyss, and us with you. The chamber murmured agreement. Some nodded, some glanced away, but not a soul dared speak in his defense. Rohan's hand brushed against the crystal. For a heartbeat it pulsed, faint but undeniable, as though mocking him. He clenched his fist. You call me chained? Then know this. If I am a beast, it is your enemies who will feel my fangs. Not you, unless you drive me to it. A ripple of unease passed through the lords. His words, intended as defiance, sounded perilously close to threat. The High Elder struck his staff against the stone, silencing the chamber. Enough. This city teeters on the edge of ruin. The people must see unity, or they will see blood in the streets. Lord Rohan, tomorrow at dawn, you will present yourself before the flame once more. Not for trial, but for oath. Swear to the ancestors that you serve Frosthaven, not the shadow that clings to you. Rohan's eyes burned. And if I refuse? The elder's voice was grave. Then the council will act. For the sake of Frosthaven. The hall emptied with whispers trailing like smoke. Only Aelin remained beside him, her hand light upon her dagger's hilt. She studied him with eyes sharp as steel. They mean to strip you of power, she said. An oath binds more than words. If you bend the knee tomorrow, they will hold it over you until the end of your days. Every choice, every command, questioned. Every weakness, exploited. And if I do not bend? Rohan asked quietly. Her lips tightened. Then they will call you enemy, and the city will bleed before the snows melt. Silence stretched between them. Beyond the windows, the chants of the crowd continued, louder now, echoing through the night. Some voices prayed for salvation. Others cursed his name. Rohan turned to the flames in the hearth, staring into their shifting light. Was it his path to prove himself, to kneel before the fire again and swear to serve? Or was that path only another snare laid by Kaelor's unseen hand? From the shadows above the hall, a raven stirred, feathers black as midnight, eyes burning faint with sorcery. It cocked its head, listening, before taking wing into the storm. Far across the mountains, Kaelor's smile widened. The leash tightens, he whispered. Soon, wolf, you will choke on the choice you cannot escape. Snow fell in heavy flakes, muting the city's usual clamor. Yet beneath the white silence, Frosthaven simmered. The dragon's corpse lay frozen on the eastern plain, but its shadow lingered in the minds of the people. What had been awe now soured into unease, and unease into suspicion. The markets were the first to boil over. Did you hear? A merchant hissed, clutching a cloak tight against the cold. They say Lord Rohan turned men to ice with a glance. Not just enemies, his own soldiers. That's a lie, spat a woman hauling fish, though her voice trembled. He saved us. I saw it with my own eyes. Without him, the beast would have burned us all. And if next time he turns that frost on you, the merchant countered. Do you think he'll spare anyone, when the hunger takes him? Their words sparked louder arguments, drawing a crowd. Soon fists flew, and guards had to wade into the throng, dragging people apart before blood stained the snow. By nightfall, the unrest had spread. Torches flickered in alleyways as small bands gathered, some chanting Rohan's name in loyalty, others spitting curses at the Iceborn Lord. Walls filled with crude sigils, half prayer, half warning. Through it all, unseen watchers moved. Cloaked figures slipping through shadows, whispering to merchants, to beggars, to broken soldiers with nothing left but anger. Coins changed hands. Rumors sharpened into blades. At the center of one such gathering, in the cellar of a half-burnt tavern, a cloaked woman raised her hand. Her voice cut clear through the gloom. Rohan is not your savior. He is Kaelor's pawn. The crystal is a curse, and every heartbeat he draws with it brings the shadow closer to our gates. Will you wait until Frosthaven itself freezes from within? The crowd stirred uneasily. A scarred man spat into the dirt. And what would you have us do, witch? He's lord now, and his sword has more power than all our knives. The woman's hood slipped, revealing dark braids streaked with silver. Her eyes gleamed like steel. Knives are not enough. But fire can melt ice, and fire, my friends, is always near. A murmur of agreement rose. The cellar filled with the stench of smoke, the promise of revolt flickering in the torchlight. Meanwhile, Aelin walked the streets cloaked in furs, her eyes sharp beneath the hood. She heard the whispers, saw the sigils daubed in ash upon walls. The city's pulse quickened, and it was not loyalty she felt. It was fear sharpened into rage. 2 guards followed her at a distance, but even they looked uneasy, as though afraid of their own shadows. She turned a corner, and froze. A raven perched on a broken post, its feathers black as night, its eyes glimmering faint with sorcery. It tilted its head at her, then took wing, vanishing into the storm. Aelin's stomach knotted. Kaelor's hand was already here, fanning sparks into fire. She hurried back toward the keep, but as she passed through the market square, a voice rang out. There, the witch's whore. The crowd turned. Dozens of eyes locked onto her, suspicion and hate burning hotter than the torches. Someone hurled a stone. It struck the wall beside her, cracking against the frost. Another voice shouted, "She shields him. She brings his curse to our gates." The mob surged forward. Aelin drew steel, the blade gleaming in the torchlight. "Back," she warned, voice cold as the northern wind. But the crowd pressed closer, hunger and fear in their eyes. One man lunged, another raised a torch. The guards shouted, blades half drawn, but the tide was swelling too fast. And in the shadows above the square, unseen but not absent, Kaelor's laughter curled through the storm. The square roared like a furnace. Torches bobbed in the dark, the mob pressing tighter, their breath white clouds of fury. Aelin held her ground, sword gleaming pale under the snow-heavy sky. She saw their eyes, not just hatred, but fear, a deeper terror that demanded someone to blame. And in that moment, she knew no words would soothe them. The first man lunged. She caught his wrist, twisted, and sent him sprawling into the slush. Another came from behind. She spun, her blade flashing, nicking his arm and drawing a hiss of blood. The mob howled louder. Her guards fought to hold them back, but they were swallowed in the crush of bodies. One was dragged down screaming, a knife flashing between the legs of the crowd. The other swung wildly, torchlight glinting off steel, before he vanished beneath the tide. Aelin's breath grew harsh, her heart thundering. She could not cut them all down. She would drown in their numbers. And then the stone struck. It hit her temple, bursting white stars in her vision. She staggered, knees buckling. A roar went up. Down with her. Down with the witch's handmaid. The world tilted. She raised her blade weakly, but the next torch was already arcing toward her face. From the keep's battlements, Rohan saw it. The mob, the fire, Aelin's figure ringed by hatred. His chest clenched, breath shuddering. The black crystal pulsed at his side, hungry, eager. He gripped the parapet until his knuckles whitened. Every part of him screamed to run down there with steel, to cut them away from her with flesh and frost alike. But he knew the truth. If he unleashed the crystal here, before all Frosthaven's eyes, there would be no hiding. He would no longer be their lord. He would be their monster. The choice tore at him. Below, Aelin fell to her knees. Another torch swung down. Instinct overtook hesitation. Rohan leapt from the battlement. The world slowed as he hit the square, snow exploding beneath his boots. His sword was already drawn, the crystal thrumming like a second heartbeat. The mob froze at the sight of him, their torches wavering. Back, his voice cracked like thunder. When they did not obey, the crystal chose for him. Dark frost surged along his blade, spilling into the air, a wave of frozen mist sweeping outward. Torches hissed and died, fire smothered in a breath. Men staggered, their arms sheathed in black rime, their cries breaking the night. The mob scattered, some fleeing, others crawling from the creeping ice. A handful lay frozen where they stood, statues of flesh and fear. Silence fell, broken only by the moan of the wind. Rohan stood above Aelin, his sword dripping shards of frost, his eyes burning with unnatural light. The people watched. Hundreds of eyes, peering from alleys and windows, from behind barrels and broken stalls. Whispers rippled like wildfire. He wields it again. The curse. The Frostborn king. Aelin looked up at him through blurred vision. She touched his arm, not in fear, but in warning. They've seen, she whispered. All of them. Rohan looked around, chest heaving, snow steaming where his frost had touched. His men arrived too late, bursting into the square, their expressions a mix of awe and horror. The silence shattered when a woman screamed, "Monster!" Another voice rose. "Kaelor's puppet." The cries grew louder, spreading through the streets, until the whole square echoed with curses and fear. Rohan raised his blade high, the frost dripping like venom, his voice carrying above them all. Then fear me if you must, but know this. As long as I stand, Frosthaven will not fall. The mob faltered, torn between awe and terror. But in the shadows, Kaelor's laughter rolled again, rich and satisfied. The council chamber stank of smoke and sweat. Torches guttered in their sconces, shadows writhing across banners that had once symbolized unity. Now they loomed like accusations. Every lord and lady of Frosthaven had gathered. Their voices clashed like steel, rising, falling, cutting each other down. He froze them where they stood. Lady Eris spat, her thin frame trembling with fury. Not men, not beasts, our own people. What proof do you need? He is a sorcerer's thrall. And yet he saved Aelin, Lord Dareth countered, his fist hammering the table. Would you rather she had burned? He drove the mob apart when none of you dared step into the square. Drove them apart with witchcraft, Eris sneered. Do you not hear yourself? How long before he turns it on us? The chamber erupted again. Some cried gratitude, others shouted fear. A few, whispering low, already weighed whether it was safer to bend the knee to the Iceborn, or sharpen their daggers against him. At the far end of the hall, the High Elder struck his staff upon the stone. The thunderous crack silenced them. His white beard trembled as he spoke, his voice grave. Order. This cannot be settled by shouts and slander. Frosthaven teeters between ruin and salvation. We cannot risk binding ourselves to a power we do not understand. His clouded eyes found Rohan, who stood at the center of the chamber, silent, arms folded like a prisoner awaiting judgment. Rohan Iceborn, the elder intoned, you wield strength no mortal man should command. If it is gift, then prove it. If it is curse, then let truth burn away falsehood. The words struck like a hammer. The chamber hushed. Every noble leaned forward. The trial of flame, the elder declared. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Old words, ancient right. The fire of the ancestors, a flame said to accept the worthy and devour the corrupted. None had walked into it in a generation. Lady Eris smiled thinly, her teeth bared like a wolf's. Yes, let the fire judge him. Rohan's jaw clenched. He had expected it, yet hearing it aloud still twisted his gut. He thought of the crystal at his side, of Kaelor's laughter in his dreams. If the fire touched him, what would it see? Aelin stepped forward before he could speak. Her silver eyes burned with defiance. This is madness. He saved us, saved Frosthaven. And you repay him with fire? Silence, girl, Eris hissed. You, of all, should want him tried. Or are you bound to him in more ways than one? The insult hung heavy. Aelin's hand went to her dagger, but Rohan caught her wrist gently, shaking his head. No. His voice carried calm, though his heart thundered. He faced the council, shoulders squared. If it is trial you demand, I will not run. I will face the fire. Gasps scattered the chamber. Then it is decided, the High Elder said, striking his staff again. At dawn, the pyre will be lit in the square. Before gods and men, the flame shall speak. Later, in the solitude of his chamber, Rohan stripped off his armor. He sat before the hearth, watching the flames dance. His hand brushed the black crystal, pulsing like a living heart. Trial by flame, he whispered. The crystal warmed under his touch, as if mocking him. In the fire's crackle, he almost heard Kaelor's voice, soft and cruel. Burn, wolf, burn. The flame will not cleanse you, it will claim you. Rohan's hands trembled. For the first time, he wondered not whether he would survive the trial, but whether he should. Dawn came blood red, the sun smothered behind a veil of ash and storm. Bells tolled across Frosthaven, their iron voices dragging the city's people into the square. By decree, none were excused. Farmers, smiths, beggars, lords, all pressed shoulder to shoulder before the rising pyre. The structure towered like a gallows of old. Logs stacked high, tar slick and glistening, bound with iron hoops. At its heart, a pit crackled where the first flames licked hungrily. The scent of pitch and smoke already stung the air. Rohan walked between two guards, unshackled but hemmed in by steel. He bore no armor, no blade, only the rough tunic of the condemned. The crowd parted as he passed, faces a blur of fear, curiosity, and hatred. Some spat. Others reached out trembling hands as if to touch him for luck or curse. Above the sea of heads, on the dais of judgment, the High Elder waited, flanked by the lords and ladies of Frosthaven. Their cloaks snapped in the morning wind. "Let all bear witness," the Elder proclaimed, his staff raised high. "By fire was Frosthaven built, and by fire shall truth be known. This man, Rohan Iceborn, stands accused of wielding powers beyond mortal right. If he is pure, flame shall pass him. If he is corrupted, flame shall consume him." A rumble of voices rolled through the crowd. Children clung to their mothers. Old men muttered prayers. Lady Eris stepped forward, her smile thin as a dagger's edge. "May the ancestors show us the truth. Light the pyre." Torches plunged into the tar. The wood caught with a roar. Heat spilled outward, beating against Rohan's skin, driving the crowd back. He stood still, though his heart thundered like war drums. Aylin's face caught his eye. She stood apart, behind a line of guards, silver hair loose, her eyes burning with terror. She mouthed words he could not hear. Perhaps his name, perhaps a plea. Rohan's jaw tightened. He would not let her see him falter. The guards gestured him forward. Step by step, he climbed the wooden stairs until he stood upon the platform above the inferno. Flames leapt below, licking, reaching, eager. The heat seared his lungs, yet a strange cold spread from his core, as if the crystal inside him resisted the fire, mocking it. The High Elder raised his staff once more. Step into the flame. Time slowed. The crowd held its breath. Rohan closed his eyes. He thought of snowfields, of his mother's face long faded, of Kaelor's whispers in the dark. He thought of Aylin, her hand on his wrist, her defiance in the council chamber. And then he stepped forward. The fire swallowed him whole. Screams erupted. Aylin cried out his name, her voice breaking. The crowd surged as the heat blasted outward. Men shielded their faces. Women clutched their children. Yet within the blaze, a different silence reigned. The fire touched Rohan's skin, but it did not consume him. It roared around him, coiling, twisting, but where it struck, frost bloomed. Flame hissed into steam, smoke spiraled, and shards of ice formed in the heart of the inferno. Gasps tore from the crowd. Some fell to their knees. Others shrieked, "Witchcraft!" On the dais, Lady Eris staggered back, her smugness shattered. The High Elder gripped his staff with white knuckles, his lips moving soundless prayers. And above it all, Kaelor's laughter rang in Rohan's skull, low and triumphant. The flames bent to him, or he to them, until he stood untouched, haloed in a storm of fire and ice. The trial had not revealed purity. It had revealed power. And the people of Frosthaven would never look upon him the same way again. Chaos ripped through the square like a lightning strike. The crowd split in two currents, one screaming in awe, the other in terror. Some cried, "Blessed, chosen of the ancestors," while others howled, "Monster, sorcerer." Mothers dragged children away. Men drew daggers, as if stabbing at the air might drive back what they had witnessed. On the dais, the lords shouted over one another, their voices colliding in fury. Lord Dareth slammed his fist against the rail. "You see it. The fire bends to him. This is no blessing, this is corruption." "No," cried another, half rising. "The ancestors spared him. The flame could not touch him." The High Elder struck his staff upon the stone. Order. But no order came. The storm had broken. Below, Aylin shoved past the guards who held her back. Her voice cut through the clamor like steel. "Enough," she cried, straining to reach the pyre. "You would condemn the man who saved your borders? Look upon him. He stands alive because the gods will it. Or because he is claimed by darker hands." Lady Eris spat, her face pale but her words venom. She pointed an accusing finger at Rohan, still wreathed in steam and frost within the blackened pyre. "Look at the ice upon the fire. No mortal could summon such a thing." The people roared, divided. The square had become a battlefield without swords. Rohan stood unmoving. The flames had died to embers around him, their heat devoured. His tunic was untouched. His hair glistened with frost. He felt the crystal's steady pulse against his chest, warm as blood, cold as death. Kaelor's voice coiled through his mind. "Do you see them, Wolf? They fear you now. They will never be your people again. But they can still be mine." Rohan gritted his teeth, forcing the whisper aside. His eyes found Aylin. For a heartbeat, her gaze steadied him, though fear shadowed even her defiance. Then the guards surged forward. At a signal from Lord Dareth, half a dozen men leapt up the pyre, chains in hand. Seize him, Dareth roared, before he turns his curse upon us all. The first soldier swung his iron toward Rohan's arms. Instinct flared. Frost leapt unbidden, sheathing the chains in brittle ice that snapped like twigs. The soldier cried out, stumbling back. The crowd erupted again. Some cheered his power. Others wailed in horror. Stop this madness, Aelin cried, drawing her dagger. She slashed at a guard who barred her path, desperate to reach him. You will not cage him like a beast. The High Elder's staff struck the ground once more. Enough. His voice, thunderous now, silenced the nearest ranks. His eyes bore into Rohan, clouded but piercing. You have proven only that fire cannot judge you. Then perhaps steel will. A murmur rolled through the lords, approval, dread, hunger for blood. Lady Eris smiled again, thin and cruel. Yes, trial by flame has failed. Trial by steel remains. Let him face the champion of Frosthaven, and let the gods decide in battle what fire could not. Rohan's breath caught. The council was no longer seeking truth, only a way to break him. Aelin's face blanched. This is not justice, she hissed. This is execution wrapped in ceremony. But her words were drowned as the crowd picked up the cry. Trial by steel. Trial by steel. Rohan's fists clenched. The crystal thrummed in his chest, eager. Kaelor's laughter slithered in his mind. Yes, steel, blood, death. Let it come. With every strike, you fall deeper into my grasp. Rohan raised his head, meeting the elder's gaze. His voice was steady, though ice edged every word. Then so be it. Name your champion. The square shook with the roar of thousands. And in the shadows of the dais, a figure stepped forward, armored in black, helm under his arm, a scar splitting his mouth in a cruel grin. A warrior Rohan had not seen in years. The champion of Frosthaven, and once, Rohan's sworn brother in arms. The crowd hushed as the figure mounted the dais, each step ringing against the stone like a hammer on iron. He removed his helm and tossed it to the ground. The scar across his mouth pulled his lips into a permanent half-smile, a cruel mockery of warmth. His eyes, however, were ice. Gods preserve us, Aelin whispered, paling as she saw him clearly. It cannot be. Rohan's breath stilled in his chest. Memory surged, of campaigns long past, of nights drinking by the witchfires, of blood spilled shoulder to shoulder. Kier, he said, his voice low, torn between disbelief and grief. Once, Kier Halvorn had been his brother in arms, the fiercest warrior Frosthaven had ever bred. They had sworn oaths together, fought beside each other against the northern tribes, saved each other's lives a dozen times over. Until the day Kier vanished into exile, condemned for defying the council's will. And now, here he stood, summoned as the council's champion. Kier Halvorn, Lord Dareth announced, his voice booming over the murmurs. Exiled son of Frosthaven, returned by decree of the council. He shall wield steel in our name, to test whether Lord Rohan stands blessed, or cursed. Gasps rippled through the crowd. To recall an exile for such a trial was unheard of. But in their hunger for spectacle, for certainty, the people accepted it. Some even cheered. Kier's smile twisted. He bowed mockingly to the lords, then turned his gaze on Rohan. You should have let me rot in exile, he said, voice like gravel. Now the council offers me a gift, to carve my honor back into stone with your blood. Rohan's jaw tightened. You were my brother. Were, Kier snapped. His hand fell to the hilt of his greatsword. You abandoned me when the council cast me out. And now you stand tainted, half a sorcerer. The gods deliver you to me, Rohan. I will not waste the chance. Aelin stepped forward, fury flashing in her eyes. This is madness. The council twists old wounds into weapons. Kier, you know what he is. He saved Frosthaven, saved us all. But Kier did not look at her. His gaze never left Rohan. The High Elder raised his staff. So be it. Trial by steel shall begin at dawn. Prepare yourselves. One of you will not see another sunrise. The crowd roared approval, their thirst for blood drowning out the pleas of the few who still called for reason. Guards moved in, dragging Rohan down from the pyre and leading him toward the keep, chains ready should he resist. He did not resist. His eyes stayed locked on Kier's, the silence between them heavier than any chain. Night fell over Frosthaven. Rohan sat alone in the chamber that had been given to him as a prison. The fire burned low, shadows long upon the walls. The crystal pulsed against his chest, eager, alive. Fight him, Kaelor whispered. Unleash me, and no steel will touch you. His life will shatter in your hands like glass. Rohan pressed his palms against his temples, as though he could crush the voice out of his skull. But the whisper only laughed. The door creaked open. Aelin slipped inside, her dagger at her belt. Her face was pale, her eyes fierce. You cannot fight him, she said. Not as they want you to. If you use that thing, you prove them right. If you do not, Kier will kill you. They have trapped you either way. Rohan's voice was hoarse. What would you have me do, Aelin? Refuse, and they'll hang me for cowardice. Fight, and I damn myself. She knelt beside him, gripping his hands. Then we must find another way. Dawn is not yet upon us. Perhaps there is still a chance to turn this game against them. Rohan stared at her, torn between despair and the faint ember of hope her presence brought. But outside, in the training yard below, Kier Halvorn sharpened his greatsword under the torchlight. Sparks flew with each stroke, his scarred grin never fading. And in the council's chamber, Lady Eris watched from the shadows, satisfied. Whether Rohan bled or betrayed himself, the game was already won. The hours before dawn were heavy with silence. In his chamber, Rohan paced the floor like a wolf in a snare. The crystal's pulse throbbed at his ribs, each beat a temptation. Aelin stood by the narrow window slit, her eyes on the torchlit courtyard where Kier Halvorn tested the weight of his sword with easy swings. They brought him back for this, Rohan muttered. The council knew no champion of mine could best him. They chose the one man who would not hesitate. Not just chosen, Aelin said grimly. Bought. I can smell it on him. Kier doesn't fight for honor, he fights for a bargain. Rohan stopped pacing. What bargain? Before Aelin could answer, the door creaked open. A shadow slipped inside, Jareth, the young squire who had once ridden under Rohan's banner. He bowed quickly. My lord, Jareth whispered. I bring word. I heard it in the council hall tonight. He glanced at Aelin, then leaned closer. Kier swore an oath. If he kills you at dawn, the council restores his lands. His exile erased, his name raised higher than before. Rohan's stomach clenched. So that was the hook. Kier fought not for gods or justice, but for power. The council had given him a leash made of gold and glory. Aelin's eyes blazed. So they would trade one tainted lord for another. Frosthaven will be ruled by blood feud and treachery. Jareth nodded quickly. There is more. I heard Lady Eris speak with Lord Dareth. They said if the duel fails, if you somehow win, they will call you usurper, brand you cursed, and move the army against you. They mean to end you, my lord, no matter the dawn. The words struck like a blade to the heart. The trial was no trial. It was an execution dressed in ceremony. Rohan sank onto the bench, his fists clenched. They have already written my death. Steel, flame, or rope, it matters not. No, Aelin said, kneeling before him. It matters greatly. If you fall in the yard, they seize Frosthaven without question. But if you live without drawing on that cursed crystal, then the people may yet rally to you. They fear you, yes, but they also believe. Every word, every whisper, cuts both ways. Jareth looked between them, pale but determined. Then we must turn their game upon them. Fight Kier, but make the duel their undoing. Let the people see their champion fall, not to sorcery, but to the man you are. If you bleed, let them see you bleed. If you triumph, let them see it was by your own hand. Rohan closed his eyes. The thought of facing Kier, his once brother, now sworn to kill him, without the unnatural strength of the crystal felt like walking willingly into death. But what choice remained? Kaelor's voice coiled in his mind. Fool, you will die without me. Let me take the helm, and your victory will be absolute. Frosthaven will kneel. The council will burn. Only through me can you live. Rohan pressed his hands to his chest as though to still the cursed heartbeat. I will not be your puppet, he growled under his breath. Aelin squeezed his shoulder. Then face him as you are. That is the only victory worth having. A distant horn sounded across the courtyard. The first call of dawn. The duel drew near. Jareth bowed low. I will be among the crowd, my lord. If treachery stirs, I will act. Rohan met his gaze and gave a single nod. As Jareth slipped away, Aelin rose and placed her dagger into Rohan's hand. Take this, she whispered. Not for the duel. For what comes after. If they move against you, you will need it. The dagger's weight was slight compared to the greatsword he would soon wield, yet it felt heavier with the meaning of her trust. Beyond the chamber walls, drums began to pound, summoning the city to witness blood. Rohan stood, his shadow long in the firelight. Then let dawn decide. The courtyard of Frosthaven Keep was thick with breath and silence. Torches burned in rings around the dueling ground, their light spilling across the snow-packed earth. The council sat on raised benches, cloaked in furs, their faces stern with expectation. Behind them, the people crowded close, peasants, soldiers, children perched on shoulders, drawn by the promise of blood at dawn. Rohan walked into the yard without helm or crown, his hair unbound, his greatsword strapped across his back. He felt their eyes on him, fear, awe, suspicion. Every murmur clung to him like frost. Across the ground, Kier Halvorn entered with the swagger of a man already victorious. His armor gleamed with fresh polish, his long blade glinting pale silver. He bowed mockingly to the council, then met Rohan's gaze with a smirk. "Brother," Kier called, his voice carrying across the crowd. "They say you bear the gods' touch. Show me, then. Show me how the gods protect their cursed son." Rohan said nothing. He drew his sword with steady hands. The weight was familiar, a comfort against the storm inside him. The High Elder rose, staff striking the stones. "This trial is by steel. No sorcery, no trickery. The victor stands. The fallen yields to the judgment of the ancestors. Begin." The horn sounded. Kier lunged first, fast, brutal. Their swords clashed in a spray of sparks. The crowd roared as steel rang again and again, each blow heavy enough to stagger lesser men. Rohan met Kier's fury with measured defense, his muscles burning, his breath controlled. "Slower than I remember," Kier sneered, driving him back step by step. "Have the whispers weighed you down?" Rohan parried, teeth clenched. "No whispers. Only truth." He twisted, striking with sudden force. Their blades locked, face to face, sweat and frost mingling between them. Every strike shook his arms. Kier was stronger than memory, fueled by hatred and the promise of power. Rohan's body cried out for the crystal's dark gift, its pulse beating louder with every faltering step. "Take me, and he falls," the voice of Kaelor whispered. "Without me, you will break." Rohan gritted his teeth. "Not yet. Not ever." Kier pressed harder, his blade nicking Rohan's shoulder, drawing blood. The crowd gasped, voices rising in alarm and excitement. Aelin's eyes in the front ranks burned into him. Hold without the curse." Rohan shifted his footing, drawing Kier in close. With a sudden feint, he slashed low, cutting across Kier's thigh. Blood sprayed, bright on snow. Kier stumbled but caught himself, laughing through the pain. "Better. The wolf still has teeth." Their swords met again, the clash echoing against the stone walls. Blow for blow, wound for wound, they circled like predators, neither yielding. Then Kier roared and drove forward, smashing Rohan's blade aside. His sword arced for Rohan's throat. Time slowed. The crystal flared against Rohan's chest, begging release. But instead of surrender, Rohan dropped low, catching Kier's strike on the flat of his blade. With a surge of raw will, his strength alone, he shoved upward, twisting Kier's weapon free. In the same breath, he reversed his grip and struck. The flat of his sword slammed across Kier's jaw. The man crashed to the ground, his blade skittering away. The courtyard went still. Kier lay in the snow, stunned, blood running down his face. Rohan stood over him, sword raised. He could end it, end Kier, end the council's chosen blade. One swing, and none would dare question his strength again. "Kill him," voices shouted. "Strike." But Rohan hesitated. His chest heaved, his heart pounding. If he killed Kier, he would prove them right, the cursed wolf, the blood-drenched lord. Instead, he lowered his blade. "I will not be your monster," Rohan said, his voice echoing across the yard. "Let all Frosthaven see, my victory is mine, not Kaelor's. My strength is my own." The crowd murmured, uncertain. Some cheered, others shouted in anger. On the benches, Lady Erissa's face twisted with fury, Lord Dareth's with calculation. The High Elder rose again, voice booming. "The trial is done. Rohan stands." But before the words settled, Kier staggered to his knees. Bloodied, broken, yet smiling. "You think mercy spares you?" he spat. "You've shown weakness. And weakness is death." From the crowd, a shadow stirred. Not just one, a dozen. Figures in dark cloaks, slipping blades from beneath their furs. Gasps rippled. The council had not come to watch. They had come to finish. Aylin's dagger flashed into her hand. She shouted, "Assassins!" The courtyard erupted in chaos. And as steel rang anew, Rohan realized, the duel was only the beginning.